Affinity version 2 is out, and you cannot swing a dead cat in the Affinity universe without hitting somebody that's been talking about it. But the thing is, none of them are talking about the thing that we should be talking about. And of course, I'm gonna talk about it. Hi, I'm Dave, and I make things, and if you believe in people telling the truth and not just kowtowing to corporate needs, then hit that like button, because that's what we're doing today. So I'm gonna talk very briefly about the things that got added, talk a little bit about things that didn't make it into the package, and we're gonna have a conversation about the thing that nobody is talking about and we should be. To give a little bit of perspective about what's been happening and why all these people are coming out telling you all these good, positive things about what's going on in Affinity, you need to understand how Affinity approached the situation before launch. A couple weeks back, an email went out to a bunch of different influencers, including myself, which is weird for me to say, but whatever. The email went out to all the different people and saying, listen, version 2 is out. Go ahead and give it a test run if you want. Just don't talk about it, which was okay. But they weren't very explicit about what it was we could and could not say. I thought it would be okay to say version 2 was coming out. That's not really saying anything. We all know that version 2 was eventually coming out, right? They didn't even like that. And in that email, they promised that if we gave our feedback to them, we would get a free version of the software. I did not give my feedback, so I'm likely going to have to purchase it myself. And I did that because I wanted to be able to say that I was not bought, I was not paid for, nobody paid me anything. And by choosing that route, I get to say whatever I want. What I want to share with Affinity as we're talking right here is that good job, you did some cool things and we're glad you added them. Breaking out my notes, what's new in Affinity? Let's first talk about what's universal across all three of them. Number one, they're basically new user interface, new layouts, new functionality with all the UI UX. It's pretty good. It's almost too good. There was this moment where I was trying to click through the different palettes, just barely clicking them. It would just like move them all over the place. So it's a little bit sensitive, but it still moves a whole lot easier. Layers palettes work a lot better. The images like of the toolbars all look a lot cleaner. Everything looks nice. In Affinity, you did a great job. Small caveat, I haven't looked at any of the iPad versions, so I couldn't say anything about that. Part of the reason that I didn't enjoy working on the iPad is because these old man eyes really struggle to see what's going on in the Affinity app. Maybe they made that better. I'm gonna go check out later, but right now it's not a concern. Let's talk about Affinity Publisher and all the new things they added. Number 1, new layout. Number 2, style picker. We'll talk about that more. Number 3, place autoflow, which means you take a bunch of pictures and you go blop, 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 or it'll just go populate all these things. Number 4 is quick grid, which is basically being able to drop a bunch of boxes, a bunch of image boxes, a bunch of text boxes all at the same time, as opposed to, like drag, 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 drag. 5 is notes, like endnotes, footnotes, and etc. Number 6 is the books tool, which is going to be kind of cool. It's basically being able to take different Affinity Publisher documents and combine them into one, so that way you can have chapters and you can have a book build within one document. I'm going to talk about that one more in detail in a future video. I'm not exactly sure when, but in the future I've got ideas and thoughts around that one. DWG files, which is basically being able to open up CAD drawings or whatever. I have no need for this, but it's there for those who need it. There was also another thing that was kind of small. It was like being able to convert frame text into art text, which is basically like, instead of it being in a boxed frame, it's like straight text, and that way you can convert it back and forth in case you wanted to switch back and forth. That would have been really functional for me in this last project that I built, but that's a story for another time. Affinity Photo, improved layers panel. I mean, it really is, it's so much better than it was before. You're just gonna have to see it to find out. Number 2, non-destructive RAW. I don't work in RAW very much, but if I did work in RAW, this is actually really cool. I know a lot of people have been asking for this. Number 3 is all the different masks. You've got compound masks, you've got these things called live layer masks, which basically being able to add like adjustment layer type things into a mask, drag and drop fills, scaling patterns easier, something called normals, which is, it's more about 3D renders. There's also a mesh warp live layer, which is actually gonna be pretty cool. It's something I'll put to use. And finally, a much improved displace filter, which is something I've been wanting so much. I really thought that the previous displace filter was trash. It was bad. And the new one works a whole lot better. I can't wait to use it more. If you guys want to check out any of these things that we're talking about, I definitely recommend you go over to the Affinity page and YouTube and go look at all their videos, because there's much more information about any of this. That's why I'm just skimming through it, because there's more information out there. Affinity Designer version 2.0, this is probably the one that got the most functionality improvement. Let's see. Shape Builder, Vector Warp, Knife and Scissors tools, Area Measure tools, also that same quick grid that you saw in Affinity Publisher where you can drive out boxes and just blip, 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 and the style picker. Finally, there was a copy effects. This one is so good. The one thing that really bothered me is that I couldn't copy effects from like one layer to the next. And this isn't just Designer, it also works in a photo. I haven't tried it in Publisher. Basically, you have FX that you can just kind of click and drag from one layer to the next, and it will just automatically add that same effect. And before, what you had to do is you had to have effect, you had to go and create a style for it, and then anytime you wanted it, you had to go back to your styles, click the style, and then it would change the style for all that. This kind of eliminates one of those steps. In fact, it might even eliminate some styles altogether. Now let's talk about Style Picker real quick, because this is something they added to all 3 apps, and it will improve your productivity so much. I wish I was using it in this last project that I was working on last week for another client. You have a style, whether it's text or object, you can use the picker to pick it from one place and drop it into other items to kind of create those same effects in those things. Now it can be fills, it can be, like I said, effects, it can be text changes, like if you want to change your paragraph text styles, whatever, you can do all that. It's a game changer for productivity. Trust me, this one's gonna be big. That's possibly the most important thing to me. Now you may have a different view because some of these things may be more important to you than that, but that's a game changer for me. Now let's talk about things we didn't get. Vector brushes. I mean, you have vector brushes, but the functionality is crap. Number 2, vector trace. People have been screaming about this one for so long, Affinity. How do you not have vector trace in this update? My only guess is that it's probably coming in version 2.1, 2.2, 2.5. I don't know. Maybe they're still working on it. They're trying to perfect it, get it better. Number 3 is color mesh. I don't remember what it's called in Illustrator, but it's like having the vector warp. Instead of just warping everything, you could click on the different nodes within the warp, and that would change like the gradient around that particular node. So if you wanted to like design an apple and you wanted to have the apple to have like different shades from the lighting that would go different directions, you could do that. You can do that in Illustrator. You can't do it in Affinity. I mean, basically have all the information built in. I'm not an engineer, I don't know, but just connect those dots, please. Now, in Photo version 2, I wish channels were better. The channels in Photo are not great. Just the being able to, the functionality of use them, it's not great. It still hasn't, it was never great before, it's still not great. Number 2, macros. Better functionality, like they work better. There's more like, you know, the processing power behind them is good, but the functionality of some of the things, they just don't work well. I was gonna do a whole video about them, but they were so frustrating to me that it made me pull my hair out, so I decided not to do it. A big one for me is being able to export adjustments. Like I wanna be able to export a group of adjustments that I've made so that I can package them up and give them to somebody else. You can do it in Adobe Photoshop, can't do it in Affinity Photo. Now you can export out as a LUT and use that as something you bring back in and, you know, apply to different things. But the thing is that not all adjustment layers work within LUTs. As far as Affinity Publisher, I think they nailed all the things that I really wanted out of it. I mean, like having the ability to, you know, drop images in multiple ways and having to be able to add boxes and just in quick grids and all that stuff. That's great. And the style picker, oh, that's great. It helps me so much. As long as you're improving my productivity, then I'm golden. And the number one thing that is missing across the entire suite of products is innovation. This is problematic because in their promotional video, they said, this is gonna be a revolution. There's nothing revolutionary about these apps. The changes they made are cool. It's gonna help productivity, it's gonna help people do more work, but none of these things are innovated. In fact, Adobe has been doing most of this, if not all of this, for years. Listen, I'm not an Adobe fanboy, you guys know that, but here's what I do recognize. They're innovating all the time. If you watched anything that happened from Adobe Max this last year, you know that they are doing some really crazy stuff. And if we're being honest, Affinity isn't even in the same universe of Adobe right now. I mean, they're just operating on different levels. It really is a David and Goliath situation, but in this scenario, David doesn't have a rock, he doesn't have a sling. I mean, the best he's probably got is a sandal to throw, and you know, that's not gonna get the job done, Affinity. And by job, I mean being able to match up to the innovation level of Adobe. They're just working on different levels. That's all there is to it. But here's the thing, and I've said this many times before, these are just tools. If you have to have a certain type of technology to get your job done, then it's very possible that you might find your way out of a job if those things aren't available to you. If you can't design using just the most rudimentary basic tools, then you're not necessarily a very good or productive designer. Back behind that painting right there is a whole shelf full of books on artists and designers that had their come up in the dark ages of technology, and they got the job done. Why can't you? Why do you need all the little bells and trinkets and whistles and all the little things to get the job done? Why can't you just do the job with what's available? The truth is, you probably can get the job done with lesser tools, but what we're really talking about here is productivity. Now, Affinity has helped us with our productivity, and that's cool. That's why I like this app. They've really, at least helping me do the job better. Affinity isn't trying to be Adobe. They're trying to be the cost-effective alternative to Adobe, and I think they play that really well. There really isn't much left to say. It's time to go get to work. It's time to stop complaining about the price, because I know some people are complaining about having to pay the full price for the app. The value is there, trust me. Just suck it up and buy them. I mean, I'm going to. Now, I don't know if you appreciate this conversation, but I felt it was a conversation we need to have, and now YouTube thinks you would like this conversation. So go ahead and watch that. But before you go, make sure you click the like button, go down in the comments below and tell me what you think about the upgrades. I'm looking for some thoughts on this. And I don't know. We'll meet up again in the future. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you next time.